Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and the name of our show is called The Democratic View. And with me today, I have probably the most prominent Democrat in our district, District 1, and that is our representative to Congress, Tim Bishop. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for having me on again.
Yes, it's always a pleasure, and this is such a wonderful occasion. You have just won a lovely award, the Nelson Rockefeller Award, and I'd like you to tell us all about that award, the name of the group that gave it to us.
Well, I'm delighted to receive the award, and I was recognized for my leadership on efforts to protect water quality, both our surface waters, as well as to deal with issues having to do with drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. And it's an award that has gone to some pretty distinguished groups. Nelson Rockefeller was the first recipient of it, but I'm very honored to get it. And you know what I've done is I am the senior Democrat on the committee in the House called the Water Resources and Environment Subcommittee of the Full Transportation Committee. And as the senior Democrat on that committee it has two principal areas of jurisdiction. One is the Army Corps of Engineers, and the second is the Environmental Protection Agency's responsibilities under the Clean Water Act. The Environmental Protection Agency has been under assault from my Republican colleagues, and the Environmental Protection Agency, in the eyes of my Republican colleagues, has become the most reviled federal agency we have, more so than even the IRS. And so I have spent the last 18 months or 16 months defending both the Environmental Protection Agency and the work that it does. And just to give you the Clean Water Act, prior to the passage of the Clean Water Act, which, by the way, was signed into law by a Republican, Richard Nixon, and the Environmental Protection Agency was created under a Republican, Richard Nixon.
I know.
Those were the days. Before the passage of the Clean Water Act, only 30% of our nation's waters were either swimmable, fishable, or drinkable. Now it's 70%. Now that kind of progress was only possible as a result of the regulations and the enforcement that has been put in place under the auspices of the Environmental Protection Agency, and here in New York, the DEC, the Department of Environmental Conservation. And so I've been leading the effort to defend the kinds of things that have allowed us to go from 30% to 70%. And that's what I was recognized for that. And the other thing I've done is I have made a great effort to try to bring federal investment to our wastewater infrastructure, which has a twofold benefit. One is it protects our environment, protects the waters to which we discharge treated sewage, but it also allows for some economic development. We have areas in my district that are primed for economic development, but can't because there's no way of dealing with the waste. So the whole William Floyd Peninsula, the Mastic Beach, Mastic, Shirley area, Smith Point Park, that can't expand anymore because there's no way to deal with the waste until we have sewage treatment facilities. Rocky Point, right on Long Island Sound, another area. There's a vibrant downtown. People would like to see it expand. Can't happen until we expand our wastewater infrastructure in that area. So these are the issues I've been working on, and this is why I received that award, and I was very pleased.
Well, I also understand you were very influential on the trying to control development of the Long Island Sound, so that it
yes,
remains.
I am the author of the Long Island Sound Revitalization Act, which would bring money to the ongoing rehabilitation of the Sound and to continue the effort to improve the water quality in the Sound, but also improve the water quality and the dealing with the ecology of the Long Island Sound watershed. About 50 million people live within 50 miles of Long Island Sound, and so we really need to be very protective. It's one of the so-called estuaries of national significance. And I also am the author of the bill that would reauthorize the National Estuary Program, which provides funding to the 26 estuaries of national significance in our country, 2 of which are right here in our district, Long Island Sound and Peconic Bay.
Right.
But the Sound is a jewel, but we have to make sure we maintain it. And if we allow for too much development in the area of the Sound, or we allow the Sound waters to be degraded by road water runoff, by sewage and so on, then we have some serious problems in terms of the recreational aspects of the Sound, the fishing aspects of the Sound, and so on.
And also there was something in this award that had to do with soil that had been dredged and...
Well, I led the effort to block the depositing of contaminated dredge spoil in the Long Island Sound. There was a plan to dredge a couple of industrial harbors in Connecticut and dump the dredge spoil, out in the middle of the Sound. And I led the effort to block that. It was a successful effort, and it was a terrible idea, And I'm glad we were able to put together coalitions on both sides of the Sound, Connecticut and Long Island, and we were able to stop it.
And there was also a bill about job creation?
Well, I filed a bill, again, having to do with water, that would do 3 things to enhance the amount of money available from the federal government for wastewater infrastructure, or what we call clean water infrastructure. It would fund something called the State Revolving Fund, which is a loan fund that is seeded by the federal government to the states. The states then loan it out to eligible municipal activities, and then the municipalities repay the loan. So it creates this revolving fund that can be used for wastewater projects. So I want to increase the funding for that. I also want to create a clean water infrastructure trust fund, which would be funded by various user fees that would allow us to enhance the amount of money that would be available. And I also want to create a direct lending. The Treasury can borrow money at very low rates. Let the Treasury borrow the money, get it to the state revolving funds, and then the state revolving funds get it out to municipalities. So whether it's the town of East Hampton or the village of East Hampton or the hamlet of Montauk or whatever it is, so this is 3 different ways that we could bring wastewater infrastructure support to local communities, so that, as I say, we could both dramatically improve the environment and enhance economic activity. But also, you'd have to build all these things. And for every $1 billion we spend on infrastructure projects, we create 30,000 jobs. So it's both a jobs bill, it's an environmental protection bill, and it's a bill that would allow for economic development in terms of small businesses and so on.
I don't know if you are aware of how timely this bill is, because we are facing in East Hampton a crisis in our scavenger waste. Yep. And, there's been an enormous amount of discussion of what to do. How do we do it? What should we just, parcel it out? Should we send it up island, which of course people are very uncomfortable with doing that. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow there's a group called the Good Government Group that's having a whole forum on this scavenger waste.
Well, it used to be that the federal government played a huge role in assisting municipalities. It used to be that the federal government paid roughly 85 cents on the dollar for any kind of wastewater infrastructure project that a local government undertook, whether it was Suffolk County or, like I say, the town of East Hampton. And that's all gone away. That's all gone away. And as one of the problems with that is that the burden now falls disproportionately on that level of government that can least afford it, which are the towns and the villages. So that's one of the problems that my bill is trying to address.
Gee, that sounds like a godsend.
Well, we got to get it passed. We got to get it passed.
Oh, well, keep working at it.
Well, we will.
I know it's very difficult. We all follow what's going on in Washington, and we know.
And one of the things that I've worked hard at here is getting bipartisan support for this. And this is a bill. My lead Republican co-sponsor is a member of Congress from Ohio, Steve LaTourette, really good guy. and he and I have partnered on other things. And then another Republican co-sponsor I have is a man named Tom Petri from Wisconsin, a senior member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and he and I have partnered on some things. So I reached out to the two of them to ask them if they would join me in this effort, because the only way we're going to move this is we got to have more than just Democratic support. We have to have, I mean, you know, the Republicans control the House of Representatives. We need to have Republican support. And with Congressman LaTourette and Congressman Petri, I've got two pretty heavy hitters, good friends, and as I say, pretty heavy hitters on the issue of infrastructure. So I'm optimistic.
You know, I don't know if many people know that you are a native of this area, born, raised, and the grandson of a potato farmer.
I am the grandson, on my mother's side, the grandson and great-grandson of potato farmers. On my mother's side, she's a Roselle, and the Rosells first came to Sagaponack in the mid to late 1800s. And my great-grandfather had a farm on Hedges Lane in Sagaponack. That pretty much stretched all the way to the dunes, and then when he died, my grandfather and my great uncle took it over, and I spent the summers of my early adolescence when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, working on that farm, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I thought it was up until this job, the one I have now, is the best job I ever had. I just loved it. I loved. My grandfather would get us up at like 6 in the morning, and we'd be out on the fields at 6:30 in the morning digging the potatoes, and he let me and my two brothers, two of my brothers, I had another brother who was too young, work the potato digger, and then we would grade them, and I loved it. It was great.
You know, Sagaponack is now, I think, the highest ranking area in the country.
Yeah, I've watched it change over the 60 years that I've been here, and we used to be able to sit on my grandparents' porch. They lived on Hedges Lane, a house facing south, facing the ocean, and we could see the water. There was an uninterrupted view because it was just potato fields between Hedges Lane and the dunes. That's all it was. And now, of course, everywhere you look, there's a house. And the other thing that was so different was Sag Store. Sag Store was this sleepy little general store and post office, and you'd go to Sag Store, and parked in front of Sag Store would either be pickups or tractors. And now you go to Sag Store, and it's Mercedes and BMWs and Jaguars. So, but I still think Sagaponack's a pretty special place. I mean, it's a beautiful little slice of the Hamptons, and there's still open space there, not anywhere near as much as when I was a kid, but it's still a pretty beautiful place, and the beaches are still beautiful. So,
yes. You know, I often quote you because when I interviewed you this summer, when I was interviewing a lot of different people when I first started the show, you said to me, the economy is our environment, and our environment is our economy. And I can't tell you how many times I've told that to people.
It's so true. I mean, if you look at the principal industries of Eastern Long Island, we have travel and tourism, we have everything associated with the second home industry, we have agriculture, and we have fishing. And what those industries all have in common is the necessity for a pretty pristine environment. People want to come here and either vacation here or live here. And they want to be here because of how beautiful it is. The open space, the quality of the air and the light. And if we let that go, not only have we let go a pretty precious environmental condition, we've let our economy go. I mean, people are not going to line up, to rent homes or buy businesses out here if it's not the beautiful place that it is. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be environmentalists. And frankly, that's a point I repeatedly make in Congress, because one of the things one of the mantras, if you will, of my Republican colleagues has been that government regulation is bad and that government regulation of the economy is anti-business, and that government regulation of the environment is anti-business and is hurting the economy. And I repeatedly make the point that in my district, regulation of the environment helps the economy. And I think that's why there's a pretty broad bipartisan consensus out here that we need to preserve our economy and government, pardon me, we need to preserve our environment, and government needs to be a part of that. And it's why it's so disturbing when I see my Republican colleagues in Congress just trying to systematically dismantle the efforts that have been put in place with great success over the last 35 or 40 years.
By both parties.
Yes, had put in place by both parties, yes. But now indeed, under assault by one party, and it's very disturbing.
Yes, I know. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I swim every morning in Gardner's Bay. Probably I will start the end of April this year.
God bless you. God bless you.
You know, that water is just magnificent.
Yeah. Well, you know, as you know, I've lived here my whole life, and right now I live a little over a mile from the ocean in the village of Southampton, and you know, I love to end my day if my day ends when it's still light. I love to end my day in the summer by either going down to the ocean for a quick swim or at least a walk along the beach. Yeah. Like I say, I don't often get home when it's still light, but when it is, that's how I want to end my day.
Yeah, well, we feel very strongly about that,
Yep.
You and I both, because I know what you're talking about. Without those beautiful vistas, without that sense of, I sometimes go to the city, and when I come back, I get out of my car, and I just stand there breathing the air. It just so different.
No, we are very fortunate to live where we live, and with that fortune, it seems to me, comes the obligation to see to it that we pass it on as we have found it to the next generation, and then the generation after that. And so that's one of the things that motivates my work in Congress, is my reverence, if you will, for the quality of the environment, of my home area.
Yes, and I know you're up again for election, because that's the name of the Constitution every 2 years for congressmen.
Yep.
Yeah,
it goes by quickly. It goes by quickly, but you know, every even-numbered year, the entire House of Representatives is up for election. So you know, we'll be moving to campaigning at some point. But right now, I'm trying to stay as focused as I can on my work as a member of Congress.
And how many days are you in Washington, D.C.?
Most weeks, we're in Washington probably 35 weeks a year, maybe 40 weeks a year. And maybe I'm in Washington generally those weeks 4 days a week. It's either a Monday through Thursday week or a Tuesday through Friday week. And then generally, you know, I have events and activities in the district from the moment I get off the plane on a Thursday night, let's say, to the moment I get back on the plane on a Monday afternoon or a Tuesday morning.
You know, I went to school in Washington, D.C.
Where'd you go?
I went to American University.
So did my brother. It's a great place.
Yes, yes. And I also started my teaching career in Montgomery County.
Did you?
And when I used to drive to my first school, I used to pass nothing but cow pastures all the way out on the Rockville main turnpike.
Rockville Turnpike, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And recently, when I was down in Washington, I was shocked.
Yeah.
I have never seen a place change. And Los Angeles, I also used to go to Los Angeles as a kid, you know, see my sister, and that has changed a great deal. But nothing has changed like Washington.
Washington is
unbelievable.
A vibrant growth area right now. And you know, we have generally every semester we have at least one student from American University who's, you know, from our district, but going to school at American, interning in our office in Washington.
Oh, how wonderful!
Yeah, I like to do that. We, I mean, there's, you know, so many places. There's George Washington and Georgetown and University of Maryland and American and Trinity. And so I always like to have my DC interns be young men or women from the 1st Congressional District that are going to college in the DC area.
Yeah, well, D.C. is a great place to go to school.
It really is.
I mean, I used to do my research at the Library of Congress. Oh. Imagine that.
Yeah, you can't find a better place.
No, it's really a beautiful and lovely place to, and so full of, in fact, one quick little story. I was dating a young man who used to be a page, and he had just come out of the Korean War, and Congress was coming together for its first meeting, you know, when they meet together, the Senate and the House, and we went up and we watched them getting together, and then we left. We weren't going to be a part of what was going on, and as we came down the stairs, the guy came in a you know, a Cadillac, parked his car, and ran up the stairs, and my friend said, "That's Joe McCarthy." And I thought, oh my God. I mean, it was like real history.
Yeah.
And I remember once when my mother came down to visit me, she had a union meeting, and we were in Leisner Auditorium in GW, and in walked the speaker, John F. Kennedy.
Really?
You know, before he was president.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
You know, so you do get a lot of that down there.
You know, it's funny. Washington is basically a small town.
Yes.
So it's not at all unusual to walk down the street and, you know, see somebody that you see on TV all the time.
Yes, and I used to work in a little store on Wisconsin Avenue, and senators would come in with their wives in those days. So also, I wanted you to tell the crowd about your wonderful new addition to your family.
Oh, well, thank you for that opportunity. My daughter, Molly, has an 18-month-old grandson, Nathan Timothy, I might add, and he is just a joy. Is an absolute joy. And there's two things I love. One is I absolutely love having a grandson, and particularly one as forgive me, as adorable as Nathan is. But the other thing I loved and I hadn't anticipated is watching my daughter be a mother. It just gives me so much pride and so much joy to see her be as good at it as she is. So
we call that kvelling in Yiddish.
Okay.
But that is a treat, and that will get better and better.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
You'll never get tired of that.
I'm looking forward to that.
It's wonderful to watch them grow.
Yes.
I have only two, and that's all I'm ever going to have, but they are my darlings.
Well, and how old are they?
They're 4 and 6.
Okay.
And their brains and their conversations and their, you know, dress-ups. I have 2 girls, you know, and they love to use my makeup and all that kind of stuff. So it's really wonderful.
Well, for me, after having 2 daughters, who I adore them both, but having a little boy around is a real joy for me.
And so now you have the battle of the election, which I know must be really quite strenuous.
Well, it's a lot. I mean, because as I say, what I try to do is I try to stay focused on doing my job as a member of Congress to the greatest extent possible. So, and that's a pretty demanding job. I mean, the way I approach it, I approach it as a 7-day-a-week job, and so to layer on top of that, the fundraising and the campaigning and the debates and the meet the candidates nights and all of those things. So it's a pretty all-consuming activity, but you know, it's what I signed up for, so I'm not going to complain.
Yes. I know.
Yeah.
I know you signed up for it. As a matter of fact, I'm helping you right now. I have my petition to go around and get my signatures.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for doing that.
Well, we all do that. You
Thank
know,
you.
it's a very important part of you know, politics and
Oh,
government.
it is. It's democracy in action.
That's right. That's
so
right.
it is important, but I thank you and your fellow committee people for doing that.
Oh, well, we're happy to work for you because we believe in you, because you believe in our area.
Well, thank you.
And that's what we're really very anxious to maintain the beauty of our place. And you know, I know you work very hard at it. And how was your wife also, by the way?
Well, she's great. I mean, you know, she has her own pre-K and nursery program in Southampton that she founded, I guess now 34 years ago. And so she has, you know, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and 4-year-olds, and does it, rents space at the Methodist Church in the village of Southampton. She used to be on the campus of Southampton College for years, but moved, I guess now 2 years ago. And she's great. And I'll tell you, the thing that's remarkable about her is, I mean, early childhood, well, you're a teacher, you know, early childhood is not easy, but she's been doing this. I mean, her first job was as a Head Start teacher before we got married. So over 40 years ago, she started as a Head Start teacher. And she leaves the house every morning with the same level of enthusiasm that she did 40 years ago. I mean, she is a true early childhood genius, I think. And,
Well,
and she has great passion for it.
I mean, I used to say when I was working and teaching that I was probably the only person who put my feet on the floor and said, Monday morning, because I couldn't wait to get back to school and be with my kids and my students.
And my other daughter, I have a 29-year-old daughter who is the librarian at the Hampton Bays Middle School.
Yes,
So,
I remember.
yeah, so she's doing great also.
Wonderful, wonderful. I don't know how your wife has the patience for the little ones, though, because that does take something. I mean, you got to be buttoning those coats and putting on those boots.
She's very good at it, and she loves it. She just loves it. I stopped in there to pick her up today because the two of us were going to Father Trench's funeral. Father Trench had been the pastor of our parish, Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and he passed away on St. Patrick's Day. So anyway, I picked her up, but there she was on the floor, surrounded by kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I was always 5th, 6th grade, that kind of thing. I liked where you could tell a joke and they got it.
Well, yeah, my daughter's 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and she loves it. She loves that age group, and they love her.
Yeah. Well, we just wish you lots of good luck and keep on fighting the good fight.
I will. Thank you.
Because we need you so badly.
Well, thank you for having me on and invite me back.
I certainly will. We'll see you again later on.
Good. I hope so. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. And I think we're out of time.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's it, folks. See you again.